So, creativity is something that is totally natural within you. Every single human on this earth has a natural ability to be creative. Whether they consider themselves creative people or not, it is a natural ability within us. However, as we grow older and become a bigger part of society, we are surrounded by society and groups within that tell us basically not to be creative. They tell us to start conforming. They tell us to start um, doing what everybody else does and start to mimic other groups. There was a person called George Land, and he once did a creativity test. So what he did is he wanted to study problem solving and creative thinking in different people, and he started off with children. So he gave them certain tests to do, and he put them all at the end into a certain category. 98% of the children that did that test fell into the creative genius category, which is the highest level of creativity in terms of problem solving and creative thinking. So 98%, that's almost all the children. However, he then did that same study with 280,000 adults, and you are going to be shocked to find out that only 2% of those adults ended up in that creative genius category. So, in other words, we lose 98% of our creativity over time. So what that tells us is that as we grow older, as we become a bigger part of society, as we become a bigger part of our career, we become more established in our career, and this is especially poignant in creative careers and creative crafts, we become less and less creative. Instead of becoming more confident, more assured in our skill, creating new ways of working from ourselves, instead of doing that, we're doing the complete opposite without even realizing. Now, by no means am I saying that you should stop taking inspiration from other people, but this is just a starting point to help you understand that creativity and creative anxiety is rooted in a societal reaction. It's a societal behavior. Now, without getting into the sociology too much, what I want you to take away from this example is that you can be creative. Creativity comes from within you. It is your style, it is your identity. You're going to find a really fast way to fail with work or to fail with your hair results if you start to try and mimic other people's work and try and create work exactly how they have. If it's not authentic to you and it's not your identity of creativity, it will not feel right, it will not feel perfect, and your results will not be what you expect them to be. We're going to talk a lot more about this when we talk about creative identity and how to hone in on your own identity later on in the course. So, the feeling of creative anxiety is essentially the feeling of being creatively blocked or feeling anxious about your craft. This often comes from working in an industry that demands near perfection and puts your inner self on display for critique. So, yes, we're working in an industry that tells us that we have to create perfect results. Again, this is not to badmouth the industry, this is just the nature of the career that we're in. We've got clients who are expecting perfect results. We ourselves are expecting perfection. We put a lot of pressure on ourselves to create perfection. We have this beautiful image in our mind of what it is we want to create, whether that is a hairstyle, a hair color, or maybe just a next step in our career. We picture perfection. The one thing I want to say that you'll probably hear me say quite a lot in this course is that perfection does not exist, okay? Perfection does not exist. If you can grasp that now, if you haven't already, that's going to be one gem you can take away. Perfection does not exist. So yes, by trying to put this pressure on ourselves, this is how we start to feel creative anxiety. So what does that look like day to day, and why does that happen day to day? So first of all, we are constantly coming up with creative solutions to problems. So if a client sits in our chair, they're asking you for advice, they're asking you to create a piece of work that creates a solution to their problem. So whether it's their hair's too long, their hair's too choppy, the colour's too bright, you're creatively having to think of a solution to that problem there and then. That is a lot of work, and that is a lot of pressure for the mind to create on the spot. So that is part of why creative anxiety happens. You're also having to come up with a unique way of doing it. So there are thousands of hairdressers in the UK alone, let alone the world. So you're feeling like you're having to come up with a very unique, special way of doing it. The one thing I want you to remember is that whether you do something that is original or whether you do something that hundreds of people have done before, hundreds of hairdressers have done before, you are coming up with that. So long as you're not consciously mimicking somebody else, you are coming up with that. That is your style. So start to trust your style, start to trust that the way you're doing things is unique, because nobody has your fingerprint. Nobody can do exactly what you're doing, even if the technique is similar. So that is another reason why creative anxiety comes up, because we're constantly trying to think of a unique way of doing things. And sometimes we can overcomplicate in trying to do that. Another reason is that we have to think about something from a new perspective. So we are constantly trying to think of things from our perspective. So if it's a hair color, for example, we're thinking of, okay, how are we going to achieve this from a scientific professional perspective? Is this possible? But we also have to bear in mind that we have to take into consideration the perspective of the client as well. This is a natural thing we do in consultation, but again, naturally, we're thinking from two perspectives at once, hence creative anxiety as well. And another reason is that we're having to improvise. So we've all been there before. It probably happens on a daily basis where we're having a consultation with a client, a new idea comes up, or something that we didn't plan for is going to happen now. We've agreed to do this look instead of what we initially spoke about. So we're now having to improvise. How are we going to deliver that service to that client? How are we going to tweak what she's already got and give her what she wants instead? We're improvising all the time. All of this leads to creative anxiety. The question is, what makes feeling creative anxiety so hard and so scary? And what are the two big factors that are making this happen? The first is the obvious, fear of failure. So we're fearing that we're not going to be able to give everything that we've just spoken about to that client. We're fearing that the next step in the career isn't going to be perfect. The other one, which may not seem as obvious, is actually the fear of success. So success is what we imagine like the perfect solution to any problem or next step in our career. But success in itself is super scary. So if you are wanting success, yes, that might seem really, really inspiring and exciting, but there's still a fear that's getting in the way. So the fear that success may not be as big as somebody else's, or that we may not be able to maintain success. So let's look a little bit more into these two big reasons why creative anxiety become so hard to manage. So this is the fear that somebody is doing something better than you, or that clients aren't going to like your results, or that not knowing what people's reaction will be to your work or to your career plans, or everyone finding out that you're not as good as you say you are. That is one big fear that I've noticed with many students that I've worked with. And this is the idea of imposter syndrome, which we're actually going to talk about in our next lesson. So this is kind of what the fear of failure will look and feel like. This comparison causes us to lose sight and love and passion for the job, which is the very thing that made us creative in the first place. So if you look back to that study that George Land did, we start off excited, passionate, we love the industry, we love the craft. That's what causes amazing creativity. But the more further down the line we go, the more scared and fearful of failure that we get, the more panicky we get with our creativity. We lose that then. We lose the creativity, and the very thing that we started off with that made us creative in the first place, we're losing over time. Then there's the fear of success. So the fear of success is the idea that you're not able to maintain these great results. Again, whether that is a hair piece of work or something in your career, a next step in your career. Whether that next step happens and it's successful, it's then that fear that how can we then maintain that? How do we continue with that success and making it still as good as that level or better? It's the fear that good results are a fluke. Again, with hair or a next step in a career, the idea is that we only did that because we were lucky or it was a fluke. And then it's the fear that your success is not going to be as big as somebody else's. So yes, we get that next level of success, we master that skill, or we become an educator, or we enter a competition. But it's the fear that we're still not doing that as well as somebody else in the industry. So these are things that constantly come up within fear of failure and fear of success. You have to remember, though, that fear of success doesn't mean that it's a good thing just because you're fearing the positive outcome, the success. This is still something that limits us, gets in the way, and ultimately stops us from achieving what it is we want to achieve in our careers. So looking back at when we experience creative anxiety in our services, so we're talking about creative anxiety in that moment there and then. What can we do? How can we break away from that? Because once we get into that zone of panic and fear, we then seem to continue that service feeling the whole way through that fear until the service is finished. It's actually a better result than what we imagined. And then we step away and think, why the hell was I panicking for so long? So to stop that happening, I'm going to give you 5 easy steps that you can quickly get away from creative anxiety so that you can continue that service in a way that's positive, enjoyable, and passionate again. So step 1 is to step away. Our minds have a certain way of reacting to things when we're in an environment where something negative has happened. So if you're there and then with that client and you feel something negative has happened, so that's feeling panic, feeling fear, even if that's an internal thing, you're then going to react in a subconscious way of fear. So you're going to react to things and create problems for yourself instead of creatively thinking solutions. So stepping away from that environment for a second is going to give your brain and your mind a lot easier, kind of more successful way of problem solving. So step away is the first step to do. The second one is count to 5. So one of the easiest ways to think positively, think presently, is to become present. We can often get in our minds and we get stuck in our feelings, so we need to become present again. So once you've stepped away, counting from 1 to 5 really slowly, breathing again, making sure you're aware of where you are, and then making a decision is one really easy way to step away from anxiety in that moment. The next one is power questions. So set yourself up 3 to 5 power questions. I have 4 power questions that I always ask clients, particularly new clients, that I make sure will answer the biggest things that I need to make sure of before I start that service. So for example, it might be, what is one thing you don't want? One thing you definitely do not want. Or it might be, what's a bad experience you've had before, so that then you can start to decipher something to avoid. So it's 4 big power questions that will give you obvious answers, and it won't leave you thinking at the end, why the hell did I do that? The 4th step is knowledge. Once you've done your consultation, you've asked your power questions, you've stepped away, reassess your knowledge. Think about what it is you're actually going to provide in this service. Is it hair color, cut, style? And then think, what knowledge do I have that's applicable here? Let me refresh my knowledge. Let me reassure myself that I know what I'm doing. Let me reassure myself that I actually have the knowledge here. It's not a I don't know enough situation. Reassess the knowledge and then start to apply it. You'll automatically feel a lot more confident and away from creative anxiety. And then the last step I would say is ask for quiet. This is a really, really big one, especially if you're doing a service that requires a lot of detail, which hairdressing services often do. If it's something you're particularly not confident in, or something that you're doing that you've only done a few times, so you don't have a huge amount of experience in it, you don't need to tell them that. You just need to explain, okay, this is something that needs a lot of detail now. Excuse me if I'm not talking, just give me a couple of minutes. I just want to make sure it's perfect for you.